Hello, everybody. Let me start by saying a very happy Mother's Day to all of you. Today is Mother's Day here in England. I know it may not be the case everywhere else in the world, but it is Mother's Day here. We want to wish everybody, mothers, aunties, people who haven't had children, somehow in their lives they may have had the chance to mother somebody. So we want to wish happy Mother's Day to all women out there. And I'm just glad that you're taking time off your busy day to come and spend time with us. And today we're interviewing Martha. Martha has a very interesting background as an adoptee. He's going to share all of that with us. There are interesting parallels with Judith's life. So there's going to be a very interesting discussion comparison between Martha's experience and Judith's experience, because we need to have an understanding all the time from an adoptee perspective. And I think this would give us some clarity on the experiences that adoptees share. And I think, again, it comes back to the whole transracial business. So we'll turn over to Martha to introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Martha. I consider myself a Ghanaian because I was raised and brought up in Ghana. My biological mother is German, and I currently live in Sweden, where I am married and have 2 adult boys.
It's lovely. Judith.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Martha. And we would love to understand a little bit more about your background. You mentioned that your birth mother or biological mother is German, but however, you were raised in Ghana. So would love to sort of understand a little bit more about how you ended up in Ghana and sort of a little bit about your origins, if you're happy to share that with us.
Sure. My father, who is a Ghanaian, and he went to England to study in the late 50s. And there he met a German lady who was a very young girl. She must have been about 19, which is my biological mother. And they had a baby, me. And, at that point in time, in the early 60s, with the racial thing going on, a black guy having a baby with a white guy, it was frowned upon, especially out of wedlock. And she coming from Germany, I think the situation was even worse. So my mother had me, and I lived with her for about 1.5 years. And she was there on a student visa. So she was going to be kicked out of London because her visa was about to expire. And I guess she had to make a decision on what to do with the situation that she was in. And what I learned was that she opted to leave me in London because it was not an option for her to take me back to Germany, because her family would not accept her having a mixed child out of wedlock. So I went into foster care for a couple of years. And I think at this time, my relatives in Ghana, which is my father's relatives, had got to know that he had a child and that the child was in foster care. And Ghana being what it is, they take care of their own. And they really couldn't accept this, I guess. And I think there was a discussion among the family back in Ghana. And my aunt, who I call and consider my mother now, who is my biological father's sister. She was I don't know how they came about the decision, but I was to go and to be brought up by her. So that's how I ended up going to Ghana. And that's how I got there. And I went to stay with her and her family. She had 3 grown-up biological children already. That's when I went to join them.
Okay. So just for information for folks, this is what we would refer to as a kinship adoption. Right. So it's going to live with a actual relative.
Yeah.
So that's that's sort of a little bit of a difference in terms of one of the streams of adoption. As we've sort of talked about on the program before, there are many different types of adoption or permanency, what we refer to as long-term options for children. So
Yeah.
yours was a kinship adoption, and you went then from England to the UK. How old would you have been at this point in time?
I was about 4 when I went to Ghana.
To Ghana, okay.
Yeah. And I don't remember much, I must say, but I can just imagine what it would have felt like for me as a 4-year-old child. And I'm guessing it would have been quite bewildering and quite traumatic. Although I haven't felt this, I have no memories of this happening.
So, Mother, do you know how you were taken? How were you taken to Ghana?
Well,
how did you get there?
I don't again know why it was decided, but there was a family friend, an uncle of ours, who was supposed to pick me up. So if we look at it from the eyes of a 4-year-old child, I had been taken from my mother, and we can discuss this later, but you know, the bond between, already there you have a trauma of being taken away from your mother and this connection broken. And then I went into foster care for a couple of years, and I tried to build up, you know, as children do, to build up an identity when I was in foster care with the other foster children. And then all of a sudden, I was given over to a Black stranger, a Black guy. And to all of you who know me and know who I'm talking about, I must apologize by referring to him as a strange Black guy. But let's remember, we're talking at a point of view from me who is 4.
Yes.
And this uncle, I came to love and know and was a big support to me in my life. But as a 4-year-old at that point, he was a Black stranger, a Black man. So he came and he took me, and we were going to, you know, I don't know how much I understood, but we are going to Africa, I guess they told me, and got on a plane, and we landed in Africa, in Ghana. And then I was handed over to another stranger, my mother, who I didn't know either. I know she'd been to visit me before in London when I was in foster care to meet me, but she was still a stranger to me. And I'd been taken away from an environment where everybody was white. And now I look up and there's a sea of Black faces. And I can imagine the bewilderment, how bewildered and, you know, scary that must have felt for me. And as children do, I must have, you know, you latch onto something that I latched onto my mother, I remember. And she always says that, you know,
Sorry, which mother?
very,
Which mother? You're talking now.
My adopted mother, my auntie.
Okay, so now you're in Ghana, and so now your
and so
aunt.
I latch onto her, and I know she says this, you know, I never, you know, I was always hanging on to her, going everywhere she went. And I guess she was like my savior, the one who was going to save me, the one who was going to protect me, the one. So I kind of latched onto her, and I didn't know, you know, I wasn't told I was adopted. And, you know, children, they suppress memories and they block out memories that are not very advantageous to them.
So, Martha, wait, just a minute. At what point, first of all, I want to ask you, this person that took you to Ghana, what was his profession?
He was a doctor. He was a family doctor, yeah.
He was a family. So I think that's an important point.
Yeah.
The fact that he was a family doctor, which is probably why they gave him that task to take you.
Yes, I'm sure.
So at least that meant that you were in a safe. Well, a doctor usually would be uncle, family doctor would be a safe person.
Yeah.
That's important. But I think the question is that at what point within this family, when you came at 4, did you find out that you were adopted, or were you told that you were adopted? How did you know that? What was it?
I didn't know I was adopted. And from the time I came to Ghana, I integrated and very well into the family. And life went on. I went to primary school, and I can say that I had a brilliant childhood. It was, because as I said, I was adopted into a family. So my grandmother was my grandmother. My uncle was my uncle, and my cousins were my cousins. But I was not told that the family I was in was not my birth family. But
Okay.
as a child, I don't remember anything negative. I just went on as usual. And then, children being children, I remember in primary school, somebody overheard their mother or something saying that, oh, Martha, that's not her, that's not her mother who she's living with. And so they came and they started teasing me, a couple of girls, and saying that, that your mother is not your mother. And I got extremely angry and defensive. And I said, yes, she's my mother. What do you mean she's not my mother? And they said, but look at you, you're white and they are black. Of course, can't you see that she's not your mother, And I got very, very, very upset. I must have been around 8, 9. And I remember going home and asking my mother, my adopted mother, I said, this is what the children at school have been saying. And she just kind of brushed it off and said, oh, don't mind them. I'm your mother. So and I think then she knew she had to tell me.
Yeah.
And so I'm not certain about the timeline, but I know a couple of, I don't know if it was months after this or weeks after this, we were all at home, just me and her. And she used to go and lie down after lunch, for an hour or so. And she called me and she said, come and lie down beside me. And she told me then that she was not my mother. Don't ask me to, to say what I don't remember any of it. All I remember is that I was told I had a white mother. And so this identity I had built for myself, I was part of their family, everything was just blown to smithereens. All of a sudden, no, I'm not who I think I am, So it was.
So what sort of age? What age would this have been? It
Oh,
was
it must
around
have
8
been
o'clock.
around 8, 9, I
Okay.
think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, and it finally clicked, oh, my mother is white. That is why I look like this. It had never occurred to me that I was in the wrong family or I was not in my biological family. It never occurred to me until these girls started, pointing it out to me and teasing me. So that's how I got to know. And she told me she told me my mother was white and that my biological father was really her brother. And I don't remember. It was a mix, but.
So when you heard this story at that time, how did you make you feel? Do you remember how you felt? Was it tears? Did you cry? What
No,
did
it
you
was
do?
not tears. I don't know if it's a part of my personality, but I accept things very, I adapt very easily to different situations. So I don't remember any negative feelings. I remember just positive, oh, it was like, aha, okay, that is why
The pennies dropped.
I look different. That is
Yeah.
why, I have blue eyes. That's where it comes from. So it was like an aha and nothing
Moment.
negative. It was just, I was, okay.
That's so interesting, but
Sure.
I think it highlights how important it is for this information to be shared as young, from the very beginning,
Yes, it
really
is.
that's not an okay way to find out. For people teasing you on the playground, I can imagine, even though your reaction, ended up positively, that's what a shocking way to learn a very important information about yourself.
Yeah,
And we always say to people in this field, in this work, that is your child's information. It's their story. It's part of their
exactly.
history. And they need to know that from, as young as they come into your family. That should
Right.
be part of the history that is shared with them. And, I think that's really important to highlight, that information should not be kept, because even as a young child, as you start to explain it and you explain it, and it just becomes part of the norm, if you will, of
Yeah,
who they are, it can
yeah.
be something that you don't have to have any shame or hide.
No,
And then as
no.
people tease you, you would have been able to say, stand in your own
Exactly.
Oh, absolutely. I remember. You're right, because when I adopted my children, I mean, of course, they came and they knew straight from the get-go that they were adopted straight away. So they just grew up knowing it. And I remember one day at school, one of the girls started teasing her that, oh, your mother is not your birth mother. She's not your mother. And my daughter said, yes, she is. She is my adoptive mother. See if you can get a great mother like mine. And the girl started crying and went to the teacher to go and report my daughter to the teacher. So the beautiful thing is she stood her ground. She owned her story. Yes, she is my adoptive mother. And, that kind of thing. But it was interesting and that's only because she knew.
Yeah.
She
So
could stand in that truth and defend herself in that truth and make the person who was teasing her feel very, very bad indeed, which is very interesting. It was a curious turn of events. I remember when she told me this story, what the teacher told me, I just fell about it, laughter, And I thought, good on you, girl, good on you. You stand your ground in what you are. Yeah.
So that was a big upheaval in my life. It must have been, but I said, I don't have any memories. And then the whole things, of meeting my father.
So here you are. You suddenly found out that you are adopted.
Yeah.
You're digesting it in a very calm kind of way, but it's still having an impact on you because it's something that will never leave you. Once you hear that information, it's going to impact everything you do from then on. And so here you are. And then, so did you actually ask to meet your dad? What happened? How did that come into? And even when you were told, did you ask to find out, meet your mother, ask about your dad? What did you do at that point? Did you try to find them, pick them?
I don't remember,
Okay.
but I assumed that the family had conversations, and they realized that now the cat was out of the bag, I was gonna have to meet my father.
Okay.
Because he was Ghanaian, and he was obviously going to come home at some point, And I know I started acting up at that age, and I started getting nightmares, and I remember this nightmare that kept occurring, and I wasn't sleeping well, and I think they realized they had to do something. It was unconsciously troubling me.
Yeah.
Even though maybe unconsciously. So I remember up till today, I remember this nightmare. It was a very painful, and I could tell you it just take a couple of seconds. It's a very short nightmare. But anyway, so it was decided that my father should.
Would you mind sharing the nightmare with us, or is it too personal? It's too personal. That's okay.
No, it's okay. It's not personal,
Okay, tell us then.
The
please.
nightmare
We're
always
curious.
starts with, I'm skipping along. We're going to a party, and I'm dressed up all nice, and I'm skipping along in front of my adopted parents, going from the pavement, and the house was all lighted up, and there was music, and then there was a crack came up in the pavement, and I fell into this crack, and the crack just kept getting bigger and bigger, and I just kept falling farther and farther. And it doesn't sound like much now when I'm telling it, but it was terrible. It was
traumatizing. And it was the same dream that you kept. It was recurring.
Exactly the same dream.
Oh dear.
Over and over and over, and I kept falling and falling, and then I'd wake up.
I don't think you should minimize that, Martha. That's extremely traumatic, especially as a child. And as you're telling me that, as you're sharing, I'm actually getting goosebumps because I'm, putting myself in a child's mind. I have an 8-year-old daughter right now, and I can only imagine that feeling of absolute horror, and knowing that all of a sudden your world has completely changed on you, right? And
this falling down, and no control, and falling deeper and deeper, and it was terrible. Yeah, that's the dream I had, and I guess I was acting up, getting tantrums, and they must have realized that unconsciously. Of course, this was bothering me, and I guess I was asking, when am I going to meet my father? And so he decided to come to Ghana. I don't know if he decided or they told him, but he came to Ghana. But there's a funny story about how that dream stopped. You know, my grandmother was usually called in anytime there was trouble in the house. So I remember, and my friends who know me, well, we'll leave that. But anyway, the dream stopped. My grandmother took care of that. And
How
so,
did she do that?
well, I remember she came home and she was to sleep. She said she's going to sleep with me that night, and that I shouldn't worry. And so I fell asleep and I had the dream and I woke up crying. And I said, I'm not going to sleep again because I can't, you know, I'm scared. I'm scared of what's going to happen. And those people who know me are going to laugh now because my grandmother took a Bible. You know, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. Never have, never will. But she took a Bible, put it under my pillow, and she explained to me that she knew this. She knew about this guy in the, you know, she told me about God and that he would never let anything happen to me and that I should fall asleep. And that nothing, I was not going to dream that dream again and nothing was going to happen. And I never had that dream again.
Did the Bible continue to remain under your pillow? You took the Bible away from your pillow. I have to ask that because I wonder whether once that exercise had been done, it was enough to get the dream to go, or you had to
I
keep
don't know
the
what
Bible.
it was. I'll tell you honestly.
That's
I think
amazing.
I had the trust in my grandmother.
Yes,
that
and
she-
the words
I
were
trust,
reassuring.
yeah, I trusted her. But the dream, I never dreamt, you know, the dreams went away.
Wow.
Yeah.
How
So,
The
wonderful.
power of words, the power of words.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she was a fixer.
Oh, she
Yeah.
was. Oh, yeah.
She was one of a kind.
Oh, that's beautiful.
She
That
was.
is really amazing. So at least you had the chance to grow with her as part of
Oh
your life.
yes. Oh yes, I did. And I always say, you know, I regret not knowing my grandmother as an adult because I would have been able to talk to her
Yeah.
in a different. I knew her as a child, and I would have loved to talk to her now as an adult.
Because there are a lot of things you think you could share with her which you would
Yep, and
understand, is it?
she would know a lot more. Yeah.
Wisdom that she can share with you, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of, I know you mentioned tantrums, and that I mean tantrums you can relate directly to obviously this revelation. But were there other experiences that you had that you'd like to share with us after discovering that? Well, yeah, certainly about Adoptive that you think would have affected the way that you were in the house once this information came out. How did it affect you internally and how you behaved at the time?
I don't know, and most of the time, we adoptees don't even know why we are acting the way we do. And like I was telling you earlier, you do not grow inside another person for 9 months without some kind of connection, innate connection built into you. I mean, research has been done that by the third trimester of your pregnancy, the child is hearing his mother's voice. It's hearing what's going on around. It's feeling touch, you know, when you touch your stomach and you caress your baby. And all these memories and feelings and emotions, they are in us. You can never break it. And people just brush aside this important, I think it's a very important factor.
Yeah.
And these memories and emotions, I think we suppress them and we block them out to be able to go forward in life and build my own identity. But it follows us all through until death. And these emotions and feelings and whatnot, they can be triggered by, I don't know what triggers them, you don't know what triggers them. But it could be a touch, it could be the way somebody says something. And those memories, womb memories, are in your mind. You can't bring them out by yourself, but they can be triggered forth by different things. And sometimes I get angry, and I know my mother used to get very frustrated with me because she'd ask me, what's the matter? Why did you do this? And sometimes I didn't know myself why I was acting like that or why I was feeling like that. And I'd just clamp up. And she used to get very frustrated. But that's the way I dealt with it,
And is it because you didn't say anything? Why wouldn't you say anything if you're angry? Why wouldn't you say anything if she asked you?
Because, as an adoptee, yes, and this is no reflection on my adopted family or anything, but you do always feel a sense of gratitude. You always feel like you have to be thankful because they've taken you from a not good situation, and they've given you a life, they've given you, and they do it with love on their side. But I am feeling that, don't ask about your mother. Don't ask. It might hurt it might hurt your adopted mother. Don't ask too much. You have to be grateful. You have to be grateful, and then you get these feelings and thoughts inside your head, which you have no control over. Remember, I had no control. And when you don't give a child facts, like when they didn't tell me I was adopted, or after they told me I was adopted and they never mentioned, we never used to talk about who my birth parents were. And when you don't give a child facts, what do they fantasize?
Yeah.
So I made up my own fantasies, which I couldn't help. And then I was feeling guilty about what I was thinking. So sometimes it just, I just withdraw, and I don't think they all the time understood, but this is what I felt.
So you would withdraw, and people could see that you had withdrawn, and yet if they came to you, you couldn't explain why you had withdrawn,
No,
and you
I
didn't want to
couldn't.
engage with anybody
No,
either.
I didn't engage, and I know it was very frustrating for her, and the thing about looking, not looking the same, it really didn't bother me, but facts are facts. I was a white, blue-eyed child. I didn't look like anybody around me.
Yeah.
And that always plays a part because there was nothing I felt internally from my family's side out. It was always from outside in. Because I remember, like, my grandmother would send me to the market to go and buy some tomatoes. And I used to, these children who used to run around in Ghana, hey, bluffing, you're bluffing, you're bluffing, you're brony, you're brony. And they used to come around and shout. And
Which
it
means they're
was
shouting, white person, white person,
white
white
person,
person,
white person.
and they'll be
And there
shouting
was,
after you. Uh-huh.
yeah, and it was nothing malicious from their side. It was nothing negative. But I felt I was very, very, I hated it. I really hated it. And I had anxiety, I was very anxious of going outside on my own. If I was with my family, that's fine. But I hated going anywhere in the public space where people would, these children would,
Is it
or
about the
people would
fact that
stare.
you stood out? Is that the fact that you stood
Yeah,
out and we're drawing unnecessary attention?
yeah,
Because you're
exactly.
looking around you and thinking other people are walking, nobody's shouting at them. I'm
No,
walking, everybody's shouting at me.
and
Even
here
though
I
it's not positively meant, you didn't need to have that kind of is that it? You didn't want to draw that kind of attention all
no,
the time.
it just bothered me. No, and I don't think anybody understood it. I remember, I think I told my mother that once, that I don't like it when they are shouting over, and she just laughed it off. But for me, it was a big problem. I hated it. I really hated it. So you should never underestimate, the importance of looking like the people around you.
The people
It's
who adopt you, in other words.
Yeah, and even the people around, around you. Anyway, so
That's interesting because I mean, Judith, let me step in there because I want to ask Judith. But Judith, the same thing would have happened to you. The only thing in your case is that you are, I mean, okay, Martha would have been white looking in a black family. The family are light skinned as well, but she's a lighter skinned person. But then you are definitely a black person in a white family. And your attention would not have been very positive. Hers attention was not malicious. Yours, that bothered her. And yours would not have been that kind. How did you feel?
Yeah, I think I want to pick up on that because even if there wasn't malicious intent for what Martha experienced, it doesn't mean harm was not caused, right? And clearly, from what you're saying, Martha, harm was caused to you. You were identified as being different, you were othered. And that's very deep. How, as a child, and then to have, unfortunately, your mother not acknowledge that is very deep, and it's just, oh, don't worry about it. But no, it troubled you deeply, and your behavior showed that. And we see that often is, there's often a lot behind behavior, right? And sometimes what we need to really do is look beyond just the behavior at what is the root cause of the issue, right?
Yeah.
So I want to really acknowledge that with you, that caused you pain. That was another layer of trauma that you experienced, being called out, you know. For myself, it was similar in the sense that I was called out for being different as well, right? On some instances, you know, when I was called the N-word at 5, that was a very negative way in which difference was
But
pointed
did you
out.
understand it at that time? Did you understand the word, the
I
N-word?
understood, I understood it
And
was
you
a
were aware
negative
it was the
word.
derogatory. You were aware that it was derogatory.
I was aware it was derogatory. My best friend, who was actually black and white, mixed heritage as well, she explained it to me, you know, fully how derogatory it was, but I knew it
Oh,
wasn't a nice word. And so, you know, when you hear that, it does give you this complex of, oh, I don't want to be this dirty word, or I don't want to be made fun of or teased. Children want to fit in, right? Children's
yes,
desire to just
yeah,
blend in and fit in most often, especially at very
yeah,
young ages.
yeah.
And even when the words necessarily aren't, you know, the N word, it doesn't have to be something so extreme as that. It can just be the looks, the glances, the questioning. That can all be, oh, you don't fit in, right? So all of that builds up, and it does give a lot of people the complex when they are not, you know, racially matched and they look different. And that can be such a hard and a lonely place to be, you
Mm.
know, and carrying that burden, if you will. You need to be able to offload that somewhere. And the place we go to and turn to are our parents, because they're our parents. But if there's not a deeper understanding there, that's very difficult, because then you do feel quite lonely in this experience that you've had.
So, Judith, let me ask you this. In your case, when it happened to you, who did you turn to? When you were called the N-word, did you go to your parents?
I did, yeah, because my best friend, as I said, she was able to sort of guide and say, no, this 100% is not okay. We went home, we told our mothers. Her mother was a black woman, my mother being white. Obviously, they both were not going to stand for that. And they did take action in that instance. And they went down to the school, met with the principal, the teachers, etc. And it was dealt with very swiftly. You know, it was the same day they turned the car around and we went back to the school to make sure it was dealt with. But there were other instances when I did, you know, talk to my family about experience I had, you know, prejudice, racism that happened, shopping while black. These experiences were not always acknowledged in the fulsome way that they needed to be dealt with.
I'm sorry to cut you, Judith. It's also possible because they didn't understand it.
Well, this is what I'm saying
Yeah,
exactly. And Martha had the
yes,
same experience on the reverse end. Her
exactly.
family could not
Yeah,
have understood it, but
yeah.
it doesn't. And that's the dangerous part, is we need our parents. So we're talking to all the parents out there who are looking at adopting, specifically transracially, that you need to deepen your own understanding of race and prejudice, whichever way it comes out, because
Yeah,
you need to be there as a support for your child. Who
yeah.
else will your child turn to? And that's the, you know, that's the question.
And I think that, and let me speak as an adoptive parent here. And hearing what both of you are saying, both being adoptees, I recognize where the adoptive parents are coming from. They really are not walking in your shoes. These experiences that you're talking about are experiences you will only know when you're walking in the shoes of an adoptee, or have had the privilege of hearing this discussion in your life at some point, to be aware that these are serious matters to be taken seriously. Because I can imagine that, Martha, in your case, because your mother knew, your adopted mother knew that it wasn't malicious. The kids were just excited as seeing a white
Yeah,
person.
yeah,
They see you as a white person and they're excited and they're getting. But the point is that what your adopted mother did not realize, that even if it was not maliciously meant, the fact that you are being called out to be different,
yeah,
it means you constantly have to keep validating yourself. And I
Yeah.
think that's where the issue it comes in. So it's about us adoptive parents recognizing whenever our children are in situations that make them feel forced to have to validate themselves, we need to take that seriously, because that's an area of trauma,
yeah,
fundamentally.
yeah.
And I think that's a very important point that we all need to take away from this one. Yeah.
100%.
Right.
100%.
Right.
Well,
That's an
I'm curious.
interesting thing.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking of Martha, for you, when you were able to then meet your biological father,
Yeah.
What was that experience like? Can you walk us through that a little bit? And did that help to connect some of your dots and give you some peace? What was the experience like for you?
Well, I'll tell you, I remember I was all excited and we went to the airport to meet him. And he had two biological children. So I had a half brother and a half sister, and their mother was Swedish because he had met her also in London, this Swedish girl, and had come to Sweden with her, got married, and had these two children. So we'd been, I think, they sent me pictures, and I remember looking at the pictures, and not finally, but it was like, oh my God, here's somebody that looks like me. Here's somebody that,
Yeah.
she and even my adopted mother said, oh, this girl looks like you, and finally that 50% of me that was ignored all my life, I could identify with. So we used to, I think we wrote a couple of letters back and forth, and I had pictures of my father. So we all went to the airport to meet him, and we were all standing there, and my mother told me, well, he's going to come out of that gate, so why don't you go over there and meet him? And I knew what he looked like. So I skipped over there, and I went and I saw him coming through all the people, and I had a big smile on my face, and he looked right at me and walked past.
Oh.
And I ran back to my mother because I knew where they were. And I grabbed her sleeve and I said, he didn't know who I was. And I was going, I knew who you were through pictures. How come you don't know who I am? And, my mother, again, brushed, oh, he didn't recognize you. But there's some things I distinctly remember. And so we went home, and I didn't really connect with him.
I think that first impression had made an indelible mark in your emotions. I've come across that on a number
I
of
don't know if it
occasions.
was that, but that's another of the pitfalls or negative things of being adopted into a family, because there will always be, he's my uncle who feels, I guess, that he's my father. And yet his sister has taken on the role of being my mother. And I remember there was a lot of quarreling, there was a lot of shouting, and I knew this was because of me. And I felt horrible. And I remember I wrote a letter to my adoptive father, he was a quiet, never raised his voice, lovely man. And to be shouted at, and I wrote him a letter and I said, I'm sorry that all this is because of me, and don't mind him. And, so I never really took to him. No, I didn't really connect with him.
And so you felt bad that his presence had brought disharmony in the
I
house.
did.
Yeah.
And because of me.
What a
Because of
burden
you.
to take on as a young person too,
Yeah.
right? That's a huge burden.
So eventually did this repair your relationship with your dad as you got older? I mean, that would have happened when you were quite young. So as you got older, when did you get to see him again? Or did
Well,
you?
he came back a couple of times, and I never really connected with him. Like, I would never really want to be alone with him. It was fine when I was with my mother. And there was also this guilt that, don't show too much emotion towards him because it might hurt your mother. That, after all this time, and they've taken care of me, and now he comes into the picture. But it was more that I couldn't connect with him.
Yeah.
And I remember I was at boarding school, and I remember so clearly my dormitory looked over the headmistress's house, and I was, walking along the corridor, and I saw my biological father, and I knew that he'd come to see me. And I ran and I hid for hours. They couldn't find me. And
so you had to go he left without seeing you.
He left because I didn't want, and I always thought I'd get in trouble for that because they could not find me on school, and they must have wondered, where is she?
Yes, of course.
I must have hid for about 3 hours in an empty classroom, and he went away. So, yeah. And I know that my adopted mother was afraid that he was going to come and take me back to Sweden, take me away. I have indications that she was worried about this.
That's okay. So as you got older, Martha, what happened? I mean, obviously you left Ghana at some point, didn't you?
Yeah, I came finally. I did come to visit him in Sweden. I was about 17 at this time, and like I said, my childhood was a dream. It was I couldn't imagine a better childhood, but my teenagehood was not so good because all my friends had left. Some had gone abroad to study. My siblings had left the house. I was all alone there, and my mother she was a strict person, and she was very protective. So I know there was a lot of it wasn't too good. So I wanted to get out. But this has nothing to do with, being adopted or everything. It happens in every family.
It's a teenager. It's a teenage years. What happens to teenagers?
What happens with teenagers? So I came to see my father. This was in the late 80s, in the early 80s. And also I wanted to meet my half brother and my half sister. So I came here, and I was like, I was here for about a month, and I had a lovely time. A really lovely time, and I connected with my half brother and sister. I spent a lot of time with them, and then it was time for me to go back. And when I left Ghana to come on holiday, my intention was I was coming on a holiday and I was going to go back to Ghana. But apparently, my adopted mother thought, well, this is it. He's taking her away. She's not coming back. And my father didn't tell them I was coming back, my biological father. So I landed at the airport, and there was no one there to meet me. And I was going, didn't they know I was coming back? And so this was late at night. I took a taxi. I had no money, no nothing. And I said, I don't have any money, but when I get where I'm going, they'll pay you. And we lived at Legon. Between airport and Legon, it was just bush. There was nothing at that time. So I came back home, and everybody was like, what are you doing back home? And I said, well, I'm back. And they were all surprised, and my mother came and paid the taxi. And yeah, she hadn't expected me to come back. And she told me, well, she had actually packed up all my stuff because she wasn't expecting me to come back. And
so that's what she had been led to believe.
Well, yeah, but, I never used to question things, I don't think. And I never asked, well, how come you didn't, how come my father didn't at least call and say she's arriving at this and this time?
Yeah.
And then a few years after, I just wanted to leave, so I moved to Sweden because that was the only option open to me, was to move to my father here in Sweden. Yeah, so that's how I ended up here.
Okay, so now let's go to your mother. Did you ever at any point want to meet your birth mother?
Yes.
Your biological mother?
Yes, I did want to meet her. And like I told you, where you're not given facts, you build fantasies. And when I was having a difficult time, I used to fantasize about her coming to, take me away, and then I'd feel guilty. Why am I feeling that way? And how dare I, think about my mother coming to get me when they've been, I've had such a brilliant upbringing and everything. But, and I know my mother told my adopted mother told me that it had been discussed that I would meet her, but it never fell through. I don't know why. But I met her when I came to Sweden. I think I told my father that I wanted to meet her, and he knew where to get a hold of her in Germany. So he arranged for me to meet her. And
what was that like?
Yes.
What was that experience like? What happened there?
That was not a good experience. The first time I met her, my father told me that she was going to come for about 2 hours. She's going to come on a flight. We'll have dinner in town. and talk a little, and then she'd go back. So we took a bus, we went to the airport, and I was so excited, and he was bubbly. He was excited too, and he was bubbling away, telling me about their life together and whatnot. And then we got to the airport, and she came out, and I came face to face with this woman who looked exactly like me.
Wow.
And she had a big smile on her face, and she smiled at me. And then she looked over at my father, and her face went. And my father asked her, why you don't have such, why you smile, why you have such a big smile for her and you're not smiling for me? And she retorted something like, do I have any reason for? And my father just went, if you know who my father is, you'll understand. He just went, you could feel his anger. He got so angry. He got really angry, and he didn't say a word. And we took the bus all the way. She was trying to make conversation with me. It was very awkward, because to me, she was a stranger. And I still hadn't, now I can talk. You think I talk, but in those days, I was a very quiet, very subdued. I didn't know how to make conversation. So it was very awkward, and he didn't say a word, and she ignored him. And so when we got back to town, he just got in his car, and he says, when you're ready, call me. And he left the two of us standing in the middle of town. I didn't know where I was. I just moved to Sweden. I didn't know, anything. So she took charge, and we went into a mall, and we went and sat in a restaurant. We ordered food, and I didn't know what to ask her, and it was a
Did she ask you questions about your life?
Yeah, she did. She did ask me questions about my life, but like I said, I wasn't a very good so I gave her short answers, and I asked her, did she have any other children? And she handed over to me a towel, and she said, this towel I used to bathe you with, and I've kept it ever since, and I'm giving it to you now. And she gave me the towel, and I asked her, does she have any other children? And she says, how could I ever have children after you?
Oh, wow. Wow.
And so we sat there for a couple of hours, and she went back. And I called my father, and he came and got me, and we never discussed it again.
Wow. So did you find out whether she was married or anything? What was her life situation like?
Not at that point, but I met her again. Like when I had my own children, as you grow older, you are ready to take in more information. At a certain stage in your life and at a certain age, you can only take in so much information about these things. So when I got children, I really started to think, how could somebody give up their child? I couldn't really get it, because here I was with my own children, and I would go through hell, you would go through hell and fire for your children. And so I was ready for the next phase of information. So I got a hold of her. I think I called the German authorities and asked, I knew her surname. And in those days, it was easy. They gave me a number, and I called, sweating, and I thought, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? And I called the number, and this woman answered, and she says, this is Margaret. And I said, this is Martha. And there was a long silence, and then she says, I knew this day was going to come one day. And then we started talking, and then we decided she'd come and visit us. And so she came and stayed for a week in a hotel here in Sweden. And then I really connected with her. We talked for hours and hours. They used to throw us out of the restaurants. Talked for hours and hours and hours. And it was a brilliant experience. But what this did was made me a little angry with my adopted, mother. Well, most of all, my father, my biological father, but my adopted, because when you're not given the facts, you assume that there's this whole language we use with adoption. You were abandoned, you were left, it's not always correct. We have to start thinking that that's not always the case. Your birth mother who's left you is not always a bad person.
100%.
And the other things that have been going on in her life And the woman I met was a very bitter and very angry woman because
The
she had
your biological
my
mother.
biological mother, because
Mm.
she had suffered. I could see it. And it
Mm.
made me angry that they never, I don't know if she even knew I was being taken to Africa, in the beginning. So it made me angry that she never had the chance to even be a part of. I don't know if maybe she didn't want to. I don't know. But I felt angry for the pain this had caused her, for a mistake that maybe wasn't even her fault.
So if that's the case, Martha, I guess the test of that is she still in your life now?
No, she's not.
And why is that?
We had contact for a couple of years, and she was remarried and lived in Switzerland. And initially, she never told anybody that she had a child. But at this time, when I met her for a week, she had just told her husband that she had a child, but she made it very clear that she didn't want me to be a part of her life she had now. And that did not, I understood her. That didn't,
You accepted it.
I accepted it. I understood it because what she must have gone through.
Yeah.
What she must have gone through. And that really angers me that, nobody ever talked about her. She was like, she didn't exist.
Yeah.
Mm. So that means that she's not in your life right now. So after that was final. You had that good time together, spent a week together, and then you had this discussion, and that was it.
And then we had conversations and back and forth, but it just dwindled, just dwindled out. And now 61 years, I'm looking for her again. I want to meet her. I want to reconnect, but we'll see.
But the number you had, I guess that's a long time ago.
I
You
don't
don't
have
have it.
that's a long time ago.
And you wouldn't go through the German system to find her.
I'll see what I can do,
Oh.
But again, I have this anxiety. It's always going to be there of rejection. I always think, no, I have a number I think could be her, but I haven't gotten up the courage
to do it because she said she wanted to get her life, continue with her life without you in a way. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
know
maybe
that's
that's another trait you would see in me because of all this, that I run away from any hint of rejection, and I'm gone.
Yeah.
It could be something you say, it could be something you something little, but if I think the slightest bit that that there's going to be rejection at the end of this, I'm gone before you can reject me.
Yeah, I think it's you're protecting self-protection. It's very important, and
And
your
people
emotions.
don't understand, friends, relatives, anything. I'm gone. I'm not putting myself in that position ever
You
again.
can't. You can't allow that to happen to you because it hurts too much. And as you said earlier on, the hurt triggers all kinds of emotions in you that you can't control, and that makes it difficult, especially if you're married and you got children. But unfortunately, we have time. Because of time, we have to bring this extremely fantastic interview to an end. But Martha, I want to say thank you for sharing everything that you shared with us and be so open and so honest. Is there anything that you want to say before we round up?
So it was a near perfect life, I would say. And any issues I have brought up have had to do with me. Like I said, there are wounds, unseen wounds that are there and will always be with me, and that are triggered by different things. So it's nothing to do with the family that I was with, but they were my feelings and they were my issues. So that's also an important thing to bear in mind. Okay, so I have talked about a few instances in my life, and I have focused on these periods and these feelings in my life to make others aware of the unconscious pitfalls for both adoptees and adoptive parents. Now, I have had a whole life, and what I want to leave this interview with is that I am eternally grateful to my whole Ghanaian family for what they have given me. this was the best thing that could have happened to me. They have given me a sense of security. They have given me roots to stand on, a sense of belonging that I wouldn't otherwise have had. And, you know, one of the differences we talked about was a Black child into a white family and a white child into a Black family. And I am guessing that a Black child in a white family always is faced with these questions. Oh, why do you look different? Or where are you from? Or how come you live, how come your parents are here and so and so? I can tell you that in Ghana, I never, ever, ever got these questions. Through primary school, through secondary school, people would ask me, what's your name? I'd say, this is my name. My mother would take me by the hand and they would ask her, who is this? She would hold me by the hand and say, this is my daughter. Anybody who met me, what is your name? My name is so and so. Who is your mother? My mother is so and so. My father is this. My sister is this. My two brothers are this. End of story. So there was a real sense of belonging. Nobody questioned who I was, at least not to my face. I am eternally grateful what they have given me. And I have a self of identity. I mean, if anybody asks me right now, where are you from? No hesitation. I am from Ghana. I am Ghanaian. It's always a problem when I get to the airport and they look in my passport and they see the name Adole, and then he looks up at me and he smiles and he says, so you are Ghanaian. And I said, don't let these blue eyes fool you. Ganujimi, you. That's what I know where I am from. So don't take all these things that I've talked about as a reflection on my family that they have in some way done me wrong. I had a brilliant, wonderful upbringing. I had values. Like I know somebody when I came to Sweden commented on, oh, lucky you got out of Africa, become a nurse and you've been able to make something of yourself. I nearly blew the person's head off. I said, everything you see in me, what I am now, my independence, my loyalty, my sense of work hard, and everything you see in me as a person as positive is from Africa. The Africa you are telling me that I'm lucky I got away from. It's all what my parents and what my family instilled in me, and I will always be grateful for that. Don't take the pitfalls that I have pointed out as something that made my life not good. Thank you to my Ghanaian family for giving me this in my life. It has made me be able to fight so many other things that have followed my journey out here in Europe. Thank you very much.
I guess I wonder, have you ever connected with other adopted people? You know, did you ever have that opportunity to engage?
No.
Do you think that would have been something that would have assisted you or been a support at all?
I don't know.
That's
I
fair.
don't think so. Because, you know, even though I've brought up these negative things that I felt, it was on the whole a very positive, and I never really felt the need, you know.
Right.
Yeah, my adoption was a very positive thing. The only thing I wonder in this whole thing, if it hadn't had been better to bring me into the family as what I was.
Yeah.
As a you know,
As a niece.
as I'm your auntie, your father is abroad, and you know, give me that narrative from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And I think if they'd done that, Martha, do you know what would have happened? That may not have happened, but most people who are brought in that way actually eventually ask the parents to adopt them. But
Yeah.
then, at least if that had happened, you would have done it from a place not only of knowing, but it would have been your choice, your
Yeah,
decision.
exactly.
Exactly. Sure,
Yeah.
I get it. And also,
So
you mentioned the thing. What about the family that you were in? Did the children know that you were coming? Did they bring when you were being brought into the house? Did they know that you were being brought into the household?
they must
Your
have. I'm sure they knew. But I
okay.
can only imagine. It's nothing that has been shown to me or anything. But I can imagine there must have been there must have been jealousy. There must have been envious. You know, here comes a new a new baby into the family who latched onto their mother and wouldn't let go, and but at that time there was a large age difference, and the older you get, the closer this age, it doesn't feel that large, so a 10-year-old and a 20-year-old are very different. It feels huge, and that's the kind of age difference that was between us. So as I've got older, I've got closer to my siblings.
That's lovely.
Yeah,
because the age gap closes then at that point.
yeah,
That's
it
true.
closes.
Yeah,
But
it does.
I don't have anything negative to say,
Beautiful.
but I can just imagine that it must have been there.
Yeah,
It
that's
must
wonderful.
have. Yeah.
And may I ask, just quickly as we round up, I know, again, so many questions, but have you been able to maintain a relationship with your biological father and your siblings from his side?
Mhm.
No, my father passed away in 95, my biological father.
Sorry.
And that was also a very traumatic thing, the way he passed. But I don't, my half sister and my half brother, they've all moved to America, and we don't have any contact, no.
Oh dear, you didn't keep in touch at all?
Well, what did I tell you about this trait? If you don't get in
if you
touch
think
with
there's a
me,
hint of rejection,
then you don't
you're
want
out of the
to.
door. You bolt.
You
Yes,
don't want to. So I'm not. I know I've talked to their mother. Their mother is Swedish, and I have talked to her a couple of times. But no, I don't have any contact, and that's my attitude.
Yeah.
Right.
They know where I am if they want to contact me.
Right.
I don't know where they are. They're in
Sure.
America somewhere.
Sure. Wow, Martha.
So I just want to round it up. Anybody who is watching, because I'm sure people who know me and know the family I'm talking about, this is not about my ups and downs, the ups and downs of my life. This is my story, and I'm hoping that somebody somewhere will be listening and saying, oh, it's okay to feel that way. Okay, that's why I felt this way.
Yeah.
It's to learn, and and I hope somebody learns something. But my childhood, again, I want to say, was probably the best thing that could have happened to me.
Marvelous. Martha, I want to say thank you to you because as an adopted parent, you brought out in this interview a lot of things that I didn't know as an adopted parent. And I'm probably very guilty of it as well. Especially when you said about sometimes you had all these emotions and you get very angry, and you didn't even understand why you were angry and you'd act out and that sort of thing. I would have seen it and I would also have got very, very frustrated and fed up with it. And I imagine that a lot of adopted parents like me would have felt the same way. But talking to you today, I realized that actually we shouldn't take it on. We shouldn't take it personally as adopted parents.
No.
We should understand that this is what the child needs to go through. Give them the space, a safe space,
Yes.
to allow them to go through that thing.
Exactly.
But be there. There when they come out of it. We're there to support them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And because the thing is, if you ask them and they can't tell you what they're going through, there's no point in asking them. You have to just leave them to let it work through their system. When it's over, they'll come out of it. And we carry on life as normal.
Yeah.
Thank you because it means that we all have to look out for that and give them the space to do so. So if I had the chance to go back, I can think of many times in my children's lives when I would be looking to do that. I didn't do it because I didn't know. So thank you very much for sharing this with us. And I hope that other adoptive parents out there would hear it and all the other things that your experience has taught us, so we know exactly how to conduct ourselves when those issues arise. So
and like I said, don't underestimate this connection that you build with your
absolutely.
You are fighting a force of nature.
Absolutely.
If you think you can eradicate it from the child's mind.
And mother, it's not just you, because also the mother as well.
Yeah.
The mother will feel that same thing. The rip, she's also torn apart.
She is.
After your departure, as you are.
Yeah.
So it's both ways, and nobody wins in this case, unfortunately. Yes.
And I just want to add, this is a form of grief, and children need to grieve this loss. This is a trauma and a loss that is often overlooked, unfortunately. And I think that when parents do see this in their children, or they see behavior that they just can't get a handle on, reach out for support. There are a lot of adoption competent therapists
Yeah.
and folks out there who are able and willing to provide some support and assistance to families and to the child who is grieving. Children need to grieve this loss, and it can come up at different stages and ages and stages of development specifically. So I just want to reiterate how important it is to get help. As a parent, we often think as parents we have to fulfill every need our child has, and that's simply not the case. When we see there's a need that is beyond us at that time, reach out for support, because it is there for yourselves as parents and for your child. It's a very, very necessary stage for your child to be able to grieve. So I just want to leave that with people that, don't ignore it, don't shield away from it. Let's lean into it and support our children on their grieving journey, because it will enable a child to come out, I would offer, a lot more holistically and in a healed manner. So it's an important stage that needs to be addressed. And thank you again, Martha, for sharing with us today. It has been an absolute pleasure. And we do look forward to having you back again.
Yes, we'll do that. We'll definitely
I'd love
do that.
to. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Martha.
Okay.
The
Thank
best,
you
and have a
very
lovely
much.
evening and happy Mother's Day.
Same
Happy
to
Mother's
all
Day.
of you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.